episode. I'm like, fuck. That would be a me move. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, honestly.
That would be on brand.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 5 O'Clock Sweats podcast. As always, I'm Ryan, joined by my handsome buddy,
Chris. I'm finally back on the podcast. It's been a while.
Yes, welcome back, my friend. It's been so long. I missed you.
Yeah, I had COVID, stomach bug, been car shopping, like a lot of just crazy stuff after every work day. I've been so busy, but I've made zero progress car shopping, but we're not tackling that tonight. So,
Nope.
Yeah, so I guess we can kind of introduce the episode here. Ryan and I had the pleasure of going on a little bit of a date on Friday, so that would be a few days from the recording of this episode, or prior to the recording of this episode, and we saw the highly anticipated movie Longlegs. I think first I kind of want to sort of get your opinion, and for any of the listeners or viewers, what category, genre-wise, are we putting this movie? Because I don't think it fits one.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit after the movie, and I mean, the movie, and I was going to get into the marketing, but the movie was marketed extremely well. Like, they marketed the crap out of this movie. Trailers, social media posts. I think there was a digital marketing strategy that had there was websites you could visit. There was a friggin' phone number on a billboard you could call, and it was Nic Cage talking to you,
I didn't
whispering
know that.
shit, which I might dial that number after we're done recording just to see. Probably not something I want to fall asleep to, though.
Definitely not.
Not the last thing I want to hear. But yeah, the movie was marketed, and the slogan of the marketing was the scariest movie, the scariest horror film in the last decade. So, obviously, with that in mind, expectations were pretty high. And it resonated with a lot of people because this movie did incredibly well at the box office. First week, it did almost north of $22 million, which is, for an indie scary movie, that's crazy good. It's really freaking good. So people were out in droves to see if this movie lived up to the hype. And yeah, after watching it, my initial thoughts were that I was thinking a lot about the movie, and not so much in the sense that it was I was trying to measure how scary it was, but it's one of those movies that kind of sticks with you a little bit. So in that sense, I would probably throw it more into the thriller, the psychological thriller category, because it kind of plants itself in your brain, and it's just one of those movies that kind of lingers in there for a couple of days after seeing it. But I didn't necessarily think the movie was horrifying or terribly scary. There were a couple of scenes that we'll get into, but definitely more on the thriller end for me. What about you?
Yeah, so I would agree with that. I definitely don't think it's like a typical horror movie. I don't think I would put it in that genre. There were a few times that I was actually scared, but I think the best word I can use to describe the feeling of this movie is unsettling.
Yeah,
it's you feel on edge, and you feel it's unsettling. Not only obviously the subject matter and everything, but just the way the movie's shot, the colors that are used, everything is kind of cold. Color wise, very dreary. Even, obviously we'll talk about Longlegs, the character, but even his physical appearance, and just everything. It seems like the weather's always kind of rainy.
It was cold.
And dark. And cold. It
was wintertime. It was definitely wintertime.
It felt very bleak. And I think they set the tone very well with the environment and everything. And also, the aesthetics that they chose. So yeah, I would say more psychological thriller, with some horror elements. And we'll kind of dive into that a little bit more, because there were some parts that I liked and didn't like about it. And I think at times the movie struggled a little bit with an identity crisis as to what it was going for and which side of the fence it wanted to be on. Not that, not that a movie has to be one concrete genre, but I felt like at times it was almost like it was like a different movie at times, so to speak.
It definitely felt like like at least two movies in one, like kind of a conglomeration of movies. And movie is told in parts: part 1, part 2, part 3.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. But I just felt like the first half of the movie hit one tone. The second half of the movie is a completely different tone. And what I kind of mean by that is that the first half is very like boots in the ground, like grounded and realistic. Like a lot of these things that are happening, it was very Silence of the Lambs-esque. I mean, we're going to reference that movie a couple times. It's probably the movie that people will invoke the most when comparing this movie to other scary movies in history. But the first half of the movie it had like a very you were very much in the company of like the FBI agents, and it was very much them trying to find Longlegs. And then the second half kind of just goes off the rails a little bit, not like necessarily in a bad way, but just like the grounded feeling you had in the first half is kind of abandoned in a pretty big way, but not necessarily to its detriment, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, I do think it struggles a little bit with an identity. And I think there's times where you can see it's trying to do a little too much, and then it sort of reels itself back in. And I actually felt like the portions of the movie that were most grounded were the best parts of the movie because they were the most believable, right? Any scary movie or thriller, I think, is most effective when it's believable. And then, there's a time and a place for kind of over the top sort of, supernatural elements. And I think this movie sort of sprinkled some of that in, not to the best of its ability. I think it could have been done a little bit better. So let's kind of dive into that real quick. Let's sort of talk about, the realistic parts versus, some of the supernatural side that I was alluding to. And for any listeners or viewers, this is a good point to say that from this point on, there is quite possibly going to be some spoilers, at least plot and sort of character kind of spoilers. We're not going to purposely run through, everything in the movie, but I think, this is a fair warning.
Yeah. It's hard to talk about this movie without really getting into the spoilers.
Yeah.
We could do a 10-minute episode on just the movie itself, but if we want to actually dive in, sink our teeth in, we gotta spoil you guys. Sorry, but you've been warned.
So I think to kind of explain what I mean by the supernatural side, throughout the movie, and especially towards the end, it kind of comes to light that there's a lot of satanic worship behind, a lot of what's going on, which is a realistic, believable thing. But then there are many, many images of the devil, itself, literally, in different shots, which I think they did very well. It's like one of those movies where, wherever the camera's focused, that's actually not where the action is, or you need to kind of be looking in the background there.
Yeah.
And I think they did a really nice job with that. So there's a lot of devil and satanic imagery, which is fairly grounded, but then eventually it gets to a point where these dolls are somehow controlled by satanic energy or the devil himself, right? You could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the man downstairs.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Longlegs himself a little bit. So Longlegs, the introduction to this character was great. I thought it was one of the scarier parts of the movie, and that's when he visits young Lee Harker's home. And I also, just really quick, the cinematography in this movie is top notch. It is a treat. It is a visual treat. Each scene is just dripping in style and just excellent craftsmanship. Like all these shots were planned ahead meticulously, you can tell, and they're all very effective. But the editing choice for that first scene where the aspect ratio is trimmed is smaller, just to like kind of give you that, like, I don't know, it kind of felt like it had that flashback feel to it, which it is a flashback per se.
Yeah, it actually kind of had like a home video feel to it.
Exactly. Yeah, the home video type of style, and this is not a home video I would be rewatching ever. But yeah, this is so Longlegs visits young Lee Harker's home, and Lee Harker is the name of the protagonist in the movie. And what, she sees the car with the doll with the black veil over its head, so she sees like a black figure in the passenger seat of the car, and then what does she hear, Chris? What sound does she hear?
Well, before we do that, so the veil, like the doll in the veil, I don't think at the time that you see that you even know what that is.
You don't know.
It comes back later in the movie, and then it makes sense. So I thought that was pretty interesting, because I was like, what are we looking at? But yeah, and then so basically Longlegs is like behind, so the camera's looking at the girl, and then in the background is like her backyard and like the corner of her house, and there's snow, and the house is also white, I believe, too.
Yeah.
And then you just see like a little head peek around the corner. And what does he say? Yeah.
Cuckoo.
Yeah, you can do it better than I can. Yeah.
Cuckoo.
You just hear like just a little noise, and you see like this little white figure kind of like peek around the corner. So first of all, very unsettling, because that's your first exposure, and like seeing him is pretty quick. It's like a split second. You have to be paying attention to catch him, and then eventually like he approaches her, and then that is where you basically get the character. But the whole conversation that he has with her, obviously it's very unsettling and very cryptic and weird.
Yeah.
And you don't understand what the hell is going on, but the way the shot is too, it's just like his nose and down.
I loved that shot, because it's like, I mean, he's called Longlegs, and we're never told specifically why he's called Longlegs, but I think this is the only scene that maybe gives us an insight into why he's called Longlegs, or why he calls himself Longlegs. And yeah, I love the scaling of the shot. It makes him look like he's super tall, and he says, I don't know what he says verbatim, but he's basically like, oh, I wore my long legs today.
Yeah.
And then crouches down very quickly, and then like you see his face for like a split second, and then it cuts the credit, or the opening credits start rolling.
But I think what's interesting too is like by seeing just the bottom half of his face, I think like those are like the most distinguished features of him, right? He has got like a very, well, it is Nicolas Cage's face, but there is definitely prosthetics.
Yeah.
Like the chin is more pronounced. Obviously the lips are too.
Cheekbones.
And then the nose, everything is like very much pronounced.
He looks like a caricature almost.
Exactly. And from what I was actually reading, and I don't know how true this is, but apparently there is supposed to be some kind of backstory to him, that he is like this like androgynous, like former kind of rock star vibe. And then he got kind of caught up in all of, like the plastic surgeries and the botched plastic surgeries at that. And so that's why he tries to kind of cover his face with like the white makeup, so to speak.
Okay. Because so kind of like Joker-esque a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Because he's very theatrical, right? So it kind of makes sense that he would have some kind of performant, background. But I don't know if there's validity to that. That's just something that I think I read or saw, and kind of made me think like that's an interesting concept for a backstory. Like, where did this guy come from? And you never really find out, you know, any information through the movie in terms of his origin.
I think that information you said was part of the digital marketing campaign they had.
Okay.
Where I think there was a website or something that actually like had a backstory, or like Longlegs lore, basically.
Okay.
So what you said, I've heard, not explained in depth or anything, but I have heard people mention that, he was like a former rock star or something. And it makes sense, because when they show him in his lair, he's sitting on the floor, and there's a poster of I don't know who it is exactly. I heard the band's T-Rex, and it's the lead singer of T-Rex. I've never heard of that band, but kind of looks like a like a, I don't know, like Slash meets Kiss kind of stuff, like sort of look there. So yeah, that backstory is very intriguing. I don't know if they necessarily need that, but it is cool, I guess, to know, I don't know, kind of where he came from. But how the hell to get on this path?
Well, and then the other thing too that kind of hints to that is like in that basement that he's in, like the mirror, right? The mirror that we see is like the mirror backstage, like a makeup mirror backstage, right? It's like that classic mirror with all the bulbs, like the light bulbs around it, like. So it's kind of like that. It does kind of allude to like, hey, he was some kind of performer at one point. But you're right. It's like, you know, how did he get to this point? I think if anybody has watched the movie, you can kind of start to infer that, you know, there obviously is satanic worship involved, and perhaps like he kind of made a deal, so to speak, with the devil, something, you know, along those lines.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, much like Joker, I think if they do a movie of like the origin of him, that would be like really awesome.
It would be interesting, just like first scenes, like Nic Cage just on a stage, just ripping a guitar and just New York, I love you, and then just like crowd surfs. The Longlegs backstory, the prequel movie that we need for Longlegs. Man,
and that's actually, you know, one of the things I felt like they did well, and then they kind of lost it, is like they just sort of slowly put Longlegs into the movie. Like it wasn't like all of a sudden, bam, like he's just in every single scene. There was a lot of like mystique around him, but then eventually, like he's just like not in the movie. And and I wanted them to lean into his character a lot more.
Yeah, I actually think he was in the movie good, like almost the perfect amount. Maybe a little more towards the end would have been nice, but I'm glad he wasn't like the centerpiece of the movie. It was definitely more focused on the protagonist, and then eventually, you know, Longlegs' accomplice. But it makes sense because you come to find that Longlegs isn't actually like the bad guy. Like he is, but he's not. He's the brains, but he's not the brawn. He's not the one actually committing these crimes. So I guess we'll get into the crime aspect really quick, like how the crimes in the movie, the murders that were happening and how they were happening. So essentially, all of these murders that took place were caused by the father getting violent and murdering his entire family, and then
in each of the families. So in each of the families.
Yes.
But it was always the perpetrator was the father. And it was stated early on in the movie that Longlegs was never actually like, there was no evidence to put him at any of the crime scenes like physically, and that he was not the one actually, you know, physically committing the murders. So right away it's like, it's very much kind of like they're in detective mode, but it's like there's something else going on here, because how could that be, you know?
All right, well, my computer decided to restart unprompted, so thank you, technology. I appreciate you. But we were talking about the actual murders in Longlegs, the murder cases that our lead character is investigating, and the supernatural element of them, I believe. So we were kind of talking about how these murders take place. So to reiterate, it's the father who's the perpetrator who ends up killing his family, and then ends his own life after. So that's the trend. That is how all of these murders take place. But as Chris mentioned, Longlegs is not actually the one committing the murders. His hands are pretty clean for the most part. But why are these murders happening? Why does the dad, what possesses the dad to commit these crimes? And you come to find out that there are these dolls, these like porcelain lifelike dolls that are created by Longlegs and his accomplice. They're supposed to look like the daughter of the family, like the youngest daughter of the family. Very creepy. And the shot, the one of the, I guess, the most recognizable shot from the trailer is the shot of the doll with the veil and then the red eyes, like the demon like eyes peering through it, which that imagery alone in the trailer was like, okay, well, that's gonna stick with me for a little bit. And it kind of did the same thing in the movie, but yeah. So essentially, so these families, they all had two things. Well, I can think of two things that they all had in common. One was that they were all devoutly Catholic. They were all Catholic families. And then the other one was that the daughter had a birthday on the 14th of any month, right? So that was the consistent trend, why these families specifically were chosen. And as Chris said, Longlegs was he was a Satan worshiper. So why these families were chosen, you can only assume it's because of their faith and that maybe their deaths, I don't know, strengthened the devil more. I don't know. That's not really completely explained. But
well, that's kind of what I wanted to bring up, is like what I was saying earlier, is I felt like that there was a lot of this satanic ritual behind it, which made sense, but then it started to get more supernatural, where it's like you see like the devil, and even when those dolls get shot, right, you saw like this kind of black matter come out of like the brain of the doll. So it's like,
yeah,
it got a little, in my opinion, it got a little bit kind of, I don't want to say corny, but it was just not really realistic, and it didn't match kind of the rest of the movie, because you had like, you know, these grisly crimes, and then it's like, okay, you find out this guy's not really the murderer. It's like, oh, because they're Satan worshipers. Like, it just felt to me, I don't know, I felt like they should have stuck with Longlegs as like the murderer, kind of like Silence of the Lambs is, where, you know, they're after this person, and maybe they're not directly committing the crimes, but they're more involved than what ends up happening. And I just felt like the supernatural force behind it felt a little bit like, oh, we need to put this in because it's a scary movie.
Yeah, and I told you when we watched when we finished the movie that I was going to go home and I was going to read the Reddit thread in r/movies and see if what people were saying. And someone did bring up the fact that this movie probably would have been a lot more effective if Longlegs was just insane, in which he is insane, but if he believed in the devil, but the devil was not actually real in
part of it,
in the universe of the movie.
Exactly. The actual physical insertion of this supernatural spirits, like literally these entities or this entity, that's what I felt like was a little bit too far. I was a little too heavy-handed. The other thing I would say, and you know, we can talk about Longlegs, the character, in a little bit more detail, but I think things started to get a little off the rails the more I just kept seeing Nicolas Cage, right? Like, at first it was Longlegs, but the more he's acting, the more I'm literally seeing Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, and I've seen a lot of comments on Reddit about this as well, and I agree that although his performance was really great, I almost feel like it would have been more effective if it was like an unknown kind of no-name actor, you know, with similar energy and mannerisms, only because Nicolas Cage is just so recognizable, that over the top, you know, style. There were times I was actually kind of laughing, to be honest.
And I think that's kind of intent. I think you should find a little bit of humor in his performance. I mean, it's as if Oz Perkins just went up to Nic Cage and was like, all right, you're going to be a caricature of yourself, basically. Like, you're going to play this role, crazy Nic Cage, like full, like pedal to the metal, crazy loony Nic Cage, and that's your job. And he ran with it.
He did, and he did a very good job. But like I said, I just think there were some parts of the movie that, like, just the realism, that the ability to believe what was happening was just kind of sacrificed a little bit, and sort of just like I was just like one notch from being like totally pulled in.
Yeah.
And I just felt like there was a little bit of something missing, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think if they lean more towards the FBI looking for the murderer and the mystique of Longlegs and just his creepy nature, I think that would have been a little bit better than, this devil direction that they went, in my opinion.
Yeah. Then there wasn't like a Sounds of the Lambs night vision goggles scene in like a house, and that scene is for my money the scariest scene in any movie. Like that scene just feels so claustrophobic, and the tensions are so high, the stakes are high. Like you feel like the actress is in trouble, and as the viewer you feel like you are also in trouble with her. Like you are on this journey with her and you're as scared as she is. There really wasn't that scene in this movie, which I think a scene like that in this movie would have really worked. It would have worked really well. I mean, there was kind of a scene like it in the beginning, where it's like Lee Harker's first assignment, and she's tasked to go with her partner to go find a suspect in an unrelated murder case. Like this isn't even a Longlegs related crime. And then she's going, like, her partner gets unfortunately shot. Like, poor dude, just like first day, and he gets one to the dome, and then she goes in and fearlessly just goes in and just with her gun up, and then like the entire place is like draped in like the plastic wrap. Yeah. It looked like a house from Dexter or something. Like, if you ever seen that show.
I agree. And that felt very unsettling in and of itself. Like, she's like clearing corners. There's all this like plastic hanging from the walls and the like ceilings and down the doorways. So like, your visibility is kind of obscured. And like that felt like the direction I thought the movie was going. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it took a little bit of a turn, not for the bad, just, my personal opinion. I think this could have been an entirely different movie and been probably just as good, maybe even if not better.
Yeah. And actually in that scene, like one of the very first scenes of the movie, you already are alluded to a supernatural element through Lee Harker herself. And she has some sort of like super intuition or like heightened sense of like, she almost is like a psychic, but not really. They kind of play it off as this, oh, she's very intuitive. She's got a good wit about her. They go to this neighborhood and they're trying to find the suspect's house. And then she's just looking around, and then she sees this house and she looks at it for a few seconds. And then she's like, that's it. That's the house. And she turns out to be right. And we're just left like, why? Like, she's okay. She has, I don't know if it's on a superpower or she just got lucky, but the way the movie presents it, it definitely is kind of like, okay, like there's something more to her than meets the eye.
But I don't think we actually find out. Like, I don't think we get too much more into that. Now, throughout the movie, she is able to sense when Longlegs is kind of, like, not necessarily around, but like when his presence is there, like something that he's done or something that he's, touched or whatever. So, they do work with that as the movie goes on, but we don't really find out exactly where that comes from.
Well, I think we kind of do,
right?
to it at the end with the doll, with her own doll. I think that there is a connection. She's connected to Longlegs through the doll. So I don't know how, now that doesn't really explain that first scene.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
But throughout the movie, there are times where she senses him or something, and she can like hear whispers and whatnot. And that's, they don't come out and say this is why this is happening, but my assumption is that it's related to the doll, because at the end when we should probably get into the big twist of the movie, I guess, at this point.
Okay, I mean, we can talk about it. I mean, I was going to maybe not try to spoil that. I think we can still make a lot of comments without necessarily giving away the big bang.
Okay, well, we don't have to do that. Although we did warn our viewers. Spoilers ahead.
We did, but I think we kind of covered even sort of which direction that goes. I think what we could discuss now maybe is the acting, because there were not a ton of characters, but there were like 4 main characters that you see throughout most of the movie, and I think each one of them did a pretty good job. The actors did a pretty good job portraying each of the characters. So obviously we touched on Nicolas Cage, as Longlegs. I think a couple things. I think the physical appearance of Longlegs, right? Nic Cage I think he's actually a pretty tall guy.
I think he's probably like 6 foot, between 6 foot and 6'3", maybe.
Right. So very androgynous, long hair, white, everything's white hair, white makeup. He has very obviously undergone multiple plastic surgeries of some kind based on the prosthetics, and his features
he looks
are
puffy.
very pronounced.
He's very puffy.
He looks puffy, and he also though it's very difficult with the makeup and the look to kind of gauge like how old is this man, right? Like, I felt like, aside from knowing who Nic Cage is, I felt like that was a little bit of a kind of a question mark too. Is like, he's middle-aged, but there are times where he looks older. You know what I mean? Like, with that long hair, he almost at times look kind of like a witch.
I get a feeling that Longlegs isn't taking a lot of care of himself. I don't think he's one for personal hygiene. I don't think he's showering every day.
You don't know.
I don't know, but I'm only, I'm just guessing based off of his appearance throughout the movie.
But I think appearance wise, it was good. He was very, he was unsettling. That's how I would describe the movie, but that's how I would describe his appearance. Not scary, not over the top comical, right? It wasn't laughable like a clown or something.
Even though you laughed maybe once.
I did, just because again, it's like I felt like I was watching National Treasure, to be honest.
Dude, I told you, it was like some of his scenes where he's just like screaming. He's just like Nic Cage screaming like like that. Like it sounded like it was basically like the scene in Kick-Ass where he's burning to the chair and Hit Girl is killing everybody, and he's just like screaming incoherently like to Hit Girl, like, yeah, daughter, get him, yeah. Like just that was basically his performance for the most part. And then he threw in a little cuckoo.
Yeah, he just plays himself. But so I think he did great. Like I said, the only thing is I'd wonder, could that character be more effective if it was a lesser known actor? Maybe. Or even actress. But so there's Longlegs, A+ there. And then let's talk. Go ahead.
Did you find Longlegs scary?
No,
or
I found
unsettling?
Him creepy and unsettling, yes. And very unhinged, unpredictable. Yeah. Right? Like when he was in the hardware store, I had no idea what he was going to do to the girl who's the cashier.
Yeah.
And he ended up not doing anything. I mean, he did his little creepiness, but he didn't actually do anything. No. You know what I mean? I thought that was going to go on a little bit longer, and then I was just kind of like, oh.
I didn't feel, and I get this is probably purposefully done, but he's very childlike in his just the way he conducts himself, and he kind of came off as not completely harmless, but harmless kind of just he's just mentally demented, but he doesn't. Again, he's not committing any crimes. He's not physically, using his hands to kill anybody in this movie. It's all just an influence. But to me, he was unsettling, but I don't know if I could see that character inflicting harm on somebody. I don't know. Just it's very strange. I wasn't very intimidated by his character. He was just creepy, but kind of in a childish, silly, way. Why is this full-grown adult acting like this? Just kind of unsettling. When he's in the store with that girl, I never really felt she was in danger.
I did, and I think that came from there's a very certain level of unpredictability with him, in my opinion, as I never knew, you never knew what the hell he was going to start doing, singing, dancing, whatever. and 90% of what he said was difficult to understand, but also like it had no real context to it. So I don't know. I could see him like, I guess, being violent. I mean, look at how he, he took his own life.
Well,
I mean, that was pretty violent, right?
that was the one time in the movie he like inflicted pain upon somebody physically, and it was himself.
Yeah. And I just like, when you don't know how somebody thinks and like what's going through their mind, I think that is the scary part in and of itself is, what could they do next? So, that's kind of my impression.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
And then, I think, next character, Lee Harker, right? This is the protagonist. She is supposed to be, I would say, a new FBI agent, right?
Yeah.
And thrown into this kind of like, find the murderer sort of thing. And she's with like the senior FBI agent. And
yep. Agent Carter.
I think her character was very interesting, right? Because there's like I think there's this intended level of like very socially awkward.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Very much so.
Introverted, but like very meticulous in kind of observing and like very much into her work.
Yeah.
Right? Like she was doing, the movie showed that she was working, pretty much all the time.
She was a workaholic, like, yeah.
Yeah. And I think like, so what's her name?
Maika Monroe.
Maika Monroe, yeah. So she's from It Follows.
Another
so I think she did a really great job because she's always very like another one where you kind of don't know what's going through her head. Man, she's very analytical. You could actually physically see like on her face, she's just analyzing like everything that's going on, but not speaking very much.
Yeah, no,
then,
not at all. But you can tell like there's something going on behind those eyes. Like she is the wheels are turning in her head at all times. And you can definitely tell like, okay, this girl has seen some shit. Like she has some trauma that maybe she's trying to suppress. I think she really embodied that very well with her performance, like just kind of being like a little socially awkward, but like socially anxious. And I think she probably works so hard to like distract herself from the reality that is her life and what she's seen.
Yeah, because like in the movie, you don't see like she doesn't have any like real social, like you don't see like a boyfriend, you don't see like friends. The only like family that she talks to in the movie is her mother. And here's another spoiler alert warning. But at the beginning of the movie, when we were talking about the little girl that saw Longlegs outside of her house, right? Like we don't know this at the time. I suspected it pretty early on. They didn't really do a great job of hiding it, but you come to find out that little girl is this FBI agent because you can kind of see all along that she, like you said, the wheels are sort of turning in there, and like you can tell there's some familiarity there. Like she just like some of this just seems like she knows this, or you know what I mean, has experienced this before, aside from like the flashbacks that they kind of show.
Yeah. Like there's something deep in there that that she's either suppressing or maybe isn't entirely aware of. And then we eventually do find out that was actually the case, that she had repressed memories of Longlegs from the first scene of the movie, visiting her home, that she had basically been kind of brainwashed to forget. And that's because of the doll that he was trying to deliver to her home in the first scene of the movie. Again, that whole thing isn't entirely explained, like what is inside these dolls, like how is this connection formed. All you know is that it's some sort of devil or satanic influence in these dolls that's brainwashing these people essentially.
So speaking of kind of brainwashing, the mother, right? So Ruth Harker, she's played by Alicia Witt. What were your impressions of the mother as a character, also, and the actress portraying that character?
Yeah. the phone calls between Lee and her mom, before you even know what the mom looks like or see her, like you could tell just by the delivery of her lines and the way she was speaking that there was something going on. Like she's unsettling. Although I feel like in the very like when the first call is made and they're talking, it kind of just sounds like a mother-daughter who haven't seen each other in a while.
You could tell there's a strained sort of relationship there from the get-go.
There's some
very,
distance there.
Yeah, it's very like informal the way they speak to each other. It's very like matter of fact, and it's not there's like I don't think there was any smiling between them in any of the dialogue, whether it was on the phone or like in person. And what's kind of funny is those phone conversations, I think, were so well done that I almost could picture the mother and like the living environment prior to us even seeing it.
That's a great point. Yeah, we'll just talk about the house that she lives in, like Lee's childhood home. And yeah, you're right. When she was talking and after hearing her voice enough, when they finally get to the house and you see what it looks like, she's basically a hoarder. She just has all of her belongings, all of Lee's belongings from when she was little, hasn't gotten rid of any of them. There's just shit all over the house. There's bags of clothes, of other knickknacks and whatnot, just like up the stairs, in each corner. Like it's a very claustrophobic feeling when you're in that house. And I thought that was like fantastic atmosphere for this movie and like a really good location for the mom character to be living in. It just seemed very, very, very appropriate for her. The actress was great. Not really familiar with her in general, but she played the mom very well. But you can also tell, kind of like Lee, with her, you can tell like, okay, like this mom has seen some shit too. Like there is some trauma behind those eyes.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's what's kind of interesting is they both have a very like flat affect, very stoic kind of look. You can see their eyes are very, they're Lee and the mother, they have like a very dull kind of like darkness to them.
Yeah, they're not very expressive
behind their eyes. And I think what's also interesting too is eventually this connection is made in the movie, but like visually, the mom and Longlegs look kind of similar, right? Like, they're very like pale, kind of washed out looking, and then like they have like a very white kind of cold, like temperature to them.
Yeah, exactly. No, she's like ghostly white. Mm-hmm. She has kind of like, it looks like she like powders her face, kind of like Longlegs with the makeup, and makes sense given that the situation with the two of them. But yeah, the mom was definitely unsettling. I felt some of the most unsettling scenes in the movie were involving her.
She got like
big time,
progressively darker and creepier. And I think it was all because the actress did a really good job of just being so, I mean, like everything was like a blank stare, like very lifeless. Yeah. And I think that really helped the performance. Because again, we keep saying this, but that unsettling, feeling, I think was just really portrayed well. And then now that I'm looking at the character list, there's literally like 5 characters in this movie.
Well, yeah, it's a very small cast, but I will say I was a big fan of the agent, the older guy, Agent Carter, who was played by Blair Underwood. He was very relatable. I thought he was kind of like the audience character in the movie, just like kind of calling out the bullshit that was happening in the movie. Like when Lee's acting weird, he's like, well, why are you acting so weird? And just like kind of bringing attention to some of the abnormalities of the movie. But I thought he was a very entertaining character, and he's a family man and just relatable on that level. unlike Lee and her mom, he had a lot of personality to him. It kind of like jumped off the screen a little bit compared to the two of them. I thought he was a perfect foil to Lee in the scenes they were in.
Yeah, and I kind of always felt though like he was that typical, like in the Scary Movie, like the tough guy character, like nothing's gonna happen to me, or I don't believe in this, that kind of thing. And then of course it always comes full circle, you know.
He did that a little bit.
Yeah, I felt that a little bit, but I do agree. He was fairly relatable. Did kind of give me like the stereotypical like cop vibe though, like, you know, like, come on, agent, tell me in stupid words, what are you talking about? You know, like dumb it down for me, like always trying to be like just like, you know, like the typical cop kind of vibe.
He's the everyman, and then
he's like, oh, let's go get a drink, and then he's like, oh, my wife's gonna be pissed at me now. Like it just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean we've seen this FBI character before. Guy gets, you know, he gets absorbed into his work, tries to balance it with his family. But yeah, overall, I thought he was a very likable character, and man, the ending for him was something. There's one more character I do want to bring up though, and it's mainly just because of the actress. Because when I saw her for the first time, I was like, "Oh, I know her." And I'm trying to find who it was.
Is it the other agent?
No, it's it's the survivor, the victim in the mental hospital.
Oh,
yeah. What's her damn name?
Camera, right?
Kathy Lee or something like that, or anyway, she was. I don't know why she's not on the list here, but the actress was the daughter in Mad Men, and I recognized her kind of immediately. I was like, "Oh, you're here. You're in this movie in a very small role, but still in the movie." But yeah, seeing her was cool, and she has a good scene after Longlegs visits her in the mental hospital because she is the only surviving daughter of one of the families that was murdered. She survived, and she's in this mental ward. And then Longlegs pays her a visit, and she gives like a really chilling. She has a very chilling scene with Lee Harker where she's just like talking to her and saying like, "Oh well, if the man downstairs told me to kill you right now, I would do it. If he told me to jump off this roof, I would do it." Yeah. That
I will say that
unsettling.
So first of all, it's Kiernan Shipka.
Yes,
that's who we're trying to find.
Yes.
And she plays Carrie Ann Camera.
Yes, Carrie Ann. That's who it is.
I didn't like the name of the camera fan. Like there's a weird. Couldn't come up with like a name that wasn't like an object. I felt that was because they refer to the camera farm, and I'm like, what the hell is a camera farm? Side note there, but I think
little nitpick.
One of the things that I felt really kind of creepy is that they kept referring to the devil, right, as the man downstairs. That was, but we can talk about this now. Again, another big spoiler. Right, it's kind of like a double meaning, right? So the man downstairs meaning the devil, but Ryan, also, what's the other side of that?
Yeah, so you come to find out that Longlegs, and they keep showing throughout the movie, they show Longlegs in a basement. He's just in a basement. This is where he makes the dolls, and you don't know where it's at. You just assume it's at his house, wherever that is. But you come to find that it is Lee Harker's basement, and he is living in her mom's basement. And that reveal fucking creeped me the fuck out, because that is just like, that's a detail that when you rewatch the movie is going to just make it even creepier. Like that he is there, he's just downstairs. And then go ahead.
Here's the thing, though, because again, like there's a scene where Lee Harker's, back in her home, like helping her mom, and then she's like drawn to this door. Yeah. Right. And she keeps getting drawn to this door, but we don't actually ever see what's behind the door until we find out, right, this reveal that that doorway actually leads to the basement stairs, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's another thing, right, where like she's drawn to like his energy.
Yeah, there's definitely some sort of connection there, some sort of supernatural connection between the two of them, where she can like kind of sense him, like at least like a faint feeling that he's around.
Yeah.
So yeah, that reveal was really good. And then I guess that should we just talk about the whole twist of the movie?
Yeah, but real quick, I also kind of want to say, like, so she can feel like his energy, like, but the interesting thing about Longlegs is his character exists more in your like your mind, kind of, because like the crimes, right? He wasn't actually there.
Yeah.
Right. He's in the basement, but you don't know he's there. Right.
Yeah.
So, and then a lot of the things that happen in the movie, it's like he's not actually there. You know, like when they find the doll, right, in the barn there, and it's like, so I think that's what's so creepy too, is like his presence is felt in a lot of different places, but he might not physically be there.
Yeah, it's kind of omnipresent a little bit.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of interesting how they were able to do that, and that adds more. Again, there's, like I said, there's a lot of mystique.
Yeah, they kind of, and I guess, well, going back to an earlier scene in the movie. And this was actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie, was when she goes home to her house and Longlegs makes an appearance. Could she have lived in like a creepier cabin? It seemed like just a cabin in the woods. Like, it was a nice looking place, but like, I mean, she's like remote. She's like by herself. Like, I don't know where, like, I get no sense that there's like a neighbor close by or anything where that could help. She's just kind of just in the woods.
Always. Yeah, and then turns on like a backdoor spotlight, and it just like it does nothing.
Yeah,
it just shines on one little circle area in the yard. Yeah, that was a little kind of like, really.
Yeah, so Longlegs is like outside in the woods. She can see his silhouette, and then she goes outside, and he somehow sneaks past her, gets in the house. She turns around, he's in the house. She sees him in the house walking wherever. And then she goes inside, and then there's a note for her on her desk. And then he just vanishes. Like, where the hell did he go? We have no fucking clue. But that's kind of what we're getting at.
That was also the other thing, too, with that scene, is like, I kept feeling so uncomfortable when they were showing her, because I kept thinking he was going to be in the background somewhere.
My God. That's why, you're right. The cinematography is the star of this show. And shots like that where she's at the desk and the camera is intentionally, like, she's in the foreground, but like the background is most of the background, the background takes up more than her. It's like, it's mostly the kitchen,
it's like
the
3/4
and the
screen. Yeah,
exactly. So your eyes are just drawn to the background, and you're just like waiting, like just dreading for something to make it, like, to show up. And they do a lot of that in this movie, and that was probably my favorite part of the movie, was just shots like that making me feel uneasy, just like long periods of silence and dread, and just being like, when's something gonna happen? And what's funny is that most times nothing happens, but still that build up to it, it's like, it's very effective. I loved it.
And I thought in that scene too, I was like, how she got comfortable too fast, don't you think? Like,
that was
just
weird.
Like, she just like sat back down, like she sees a letter from him, so she just sits down and opens it and reads it. But like, where did he go? She saw him in the house, and like, it's just like, he's probably gone.
This also goes back to maybe the connection that they have. Maybe she sensed that he wasn't going to hurt her yet. That, her birthday is on the 14th, you come to find. Shocker. And you have to, she knows that he doesn't want to harm her yet. Like, it's not her time to die. So I think in that way, she's like, okay, well, I'm safe. I might be freaked out, but I'm safe, so I can just chill at my desk and read this note without worrying about anything.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. If I'm a FBI agent, I have a gun, I'm clearing that whole house and calling the police. And I don't know. She just was like, he's probably gone.
Well, I don't know how she slept, but she She is stronger than I. She's stronger than both of us. Yeah. So should we get into the ending? Kind of,
Yeah, we
or
can
the
talk about
twist?
the ending. Yeah, the twist real quick if you want.
Yeah. So this movie has a twist, of course. And the twist is that throughout the whole movie, Lee Harker insists that Longlegs isn't working alone, that he has an accomplice, and she's trying to figure out who this accomplice is. You come to find that it is actually her mother, which makes sense because she is housing Longlegs in the basement. um, and then they have and there were 3 times I jumped out of my chair. Kind of, I had I jumped a little bit in my seat during this movie, and one of them was the scene where Lee Harker figures this all out. When she opens up the toy chest and finds his picture in there, which unlocks like all of the memories that she had, basically. And it shows that from the first scene of the movie when he visited, the mom approached Longlegs because he was trespassing, and basically he was going to kill her and Lee Harker, but then the mom pleaded for the daughter to live, and basically pleaded her allegiance to Longlegs uh, to work with him and fulfill his wishes. Essentially making a deal with the devil in the moment, with Longlegs, but also Satan himself, who Longlegs worships. And it made sense when they revealed this because why the fuck would these families invite Nicolas Cage, Longlegs, into their home with this doll? Like, if that man came up to you and said, like, oh, here's a present from the church, I would be more hesitant to let him into my home than a nun who the mom ends up portraying to get the dolls into these houses.
So that's essentially what happens, though, is she uses her stature with like the church, right? And then she comes as like a representative to each of these families saying, hey, like I have a gift for you. And it's this doll, but the doll has a, again, we're assuming some kind of demonic, presence to it. And then essentially possesses like the fathers.
Yeah.
In a long story short kind of way. That's sort of like kind of the breakdown there. So it does have a lot to do with the dolls.
Yeah.
And the mother is pretty much the one who's facilitating it, but we don't know her role entirely because the movie makes you think that she has no physical, like she's not like actually stabbing or shooting or whatever, any of these people. But I think you said it when we were leaving the theater. There's that one scene in the car where she's like totally covered in blood.
Yeah, there's a scene where she's in the car and she's like traumatized by what she just saw, and then she like goes to cry and she puts her hands over her eyes, and her hands are like covered in blood. Like that just didn't that didn't just get there by accident. Like you weren't in like the splash zone or whatever. Like you got your hands dirty. If they're that bloody, you got your hands dirty. So I think the movie is intentionally kind of ambiguous in that way. It's like, I think there were probably times where maybe the brainwashing didn't work all that well, and she had to maybe just finish someone off because just to make sure they were all dead. That's how I interpreted that. But again, the movie doesn't come out and say like, yeah, she participated in these murders. You're assuming that for the most part, she was just sitting there watching it happen to make sure that it happened.
Yeah. It is interesting too, because like even when you say it out loud, you start to realize like there's so many layers to this movie. Like it's like a cult, you know what I mean? It's like a cult, like about a cult. I'm not saying it's a cult film, but like it's about cults, right? Yeah. And then like there's supernatural to it. Then there's like the serial killer kind of like manhunt, and then like there was always like this creepy undertone, I think, with Longlegs, like, because he only went after like girls, right? And like they had like the same birthday, and then he's making dolls about them. So clearly he's kind of like stalking his prey because he has to obviously know what they look like. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? It gets like there's a lot of weird layers to it.
Again, yeah, there's no real explanation as to why. I mean, why he's choosing. I mean, we know, like I said, like there's common denominators with these families, but like at the end of the day, why is he focusing on these little girls? Is he a predator, or is he? I don't know. Like a character like that, I almost feel like he would have some sort of like tragic backstory with like a daughter that he lost or something, and like he's
Yeah,
trying to recapture that magic or like
because they're
find her replacement.
yeah, because
Basically.
there's like an obsession with like little girls kind of thing, which doesn't really make sense with the like this whole idea of him being like a rock star. I don't know. It's
It's
kind of weird.
we need the
Eh,
Longlegs prequel to really get into the nitty
yeah,
gritty here. It's
yeah.
fun.
So overall, though, I have to say I like movies that make you think, and I like movies that have a lot of rewatchability. And this, for sure, is a movie I'm going to rewatch. And I think each time you rewatch it, maybe more things kind of become apparent to you as the viewer, and maybe if some of these questions we have start to get cleared up, the more we watch, because you are focused on a lot of different things during the movie, and so I think if you can kind of go back and watch it through a different lens, and each time you might pick up more and more, and um, plus, it was a fun ride. Like it was worth watching again, just from an entertainment standpoint.
Yeah, I think this will be one that I revisit come Halloween time once it's available on digital, and I'll watch it again. Although I will admit this is a movie that I can't. I'm not gonna be able to watch by myself when it's dark out in my apartment because this. I think I know I said that like it wasn't the scariest movie of the decade by far, but it just has like a way of like just like getting under your skin and just making you feel uneasy. Um, and yeah, for that reason, I probably wouldn't be able to watch it alone in the dark. I'd have to watch it during the day at least, or with a group.
This, like I am like not the person. I don't think there's ever been a movie that I've gone and seen twice in theaters. And I
Yeah.
will say this is actually a movie that I would be willing to go and see again in
Ah.
theaters. It
Okay.
does it fits very well on the big screen.
Yeah, it does. So you
But
want to
I
go on another
do
date?
no, maybe I go with the wife this time, but
Ah. Does she
but
like scary movies?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she'll probably like it then.
But my point is too, I think as with all scary movies, right, it's not just what you're seeing, but like the sound. And I think there's a lot to be said about the sound component of the
Mm-hmm.
movie. I think, a lot of the jump scares were not visually scary as much as they were from like an auditory standpoint,
Yeah.
like the sudden sounds and just, you know, Nicolas Cage just kind of like is just amped up on the theater speakers, just like his weird monologues and singing and
Yeah.
bravado and all that shit. So I think it'd be worth seeing again in theaters.
Yeah. And like for the sound design, I mean, honestly, some of the best scenes are the scenes that have no sound. Like just like the long periods of silence
Yeah.
that just add to that unnerving feeling.
Yeah.
Um so let's quickly just like the ending. Were you satisfied with the way this movie ended?
No, not at all. I
Yeah.
felt this was actually a movie. I'm always the opposite. I want the movies to be shorter sometimes. And I actually wanted this to keep going like another hour.
Yeah.
I do kind of feel like it seems, and then maybe this was the way it was edited, or I don't know if it was intentional, but it did feel like kind of rushed at the end.
A little bit.
And I always feel like these kind of like detective, mysterious thriller movies end like that. Usually it's like this big build up, and then all of a sudden it's just like, a whole bunch of chaos. And sometimes that gets a little corny.
Yeah. But I
I mean,
think
I understood the ending, but I felt like it could have been drawn out a little bit better.
yeah. So basically from the moment Longlegs is captured, the interrogation scene, which was great. But and also I hate the way he got captured, but anyway,
Yeah,
he's just at a bus stop. That was way too easy. After we were just talking about how like omnipresent he is, like he's there but he's not. He was just
he's
standing there at the bus stop. He had his suitcases with him and he just drops him, just like accepts his fate. But from the time that Nick Longlegs is no longer in the movie, um, it just kind of just gets wacky, really wacky.
Yeah.
And actually, now that I think about it, the way you said the ending felt rushed, and I think it did feel a little rushed, but I wonder if that was intentional, because Lee Harker is coming out of like a comatose, kind of like her mom shoots her doll that she's been keeping, and then she collapses and faints and is out of commission for, I don't know, a couple hours, whatever. And she's coming out of like a daze, and she's in a different location. She's not even sure where she's at. And then she starts putting things together that, okay, like, oh, she gets the phone call from whatever that was. I'm not sure if that was Longlegs prevailing or like from the afterlife or I don't know. Someone's on the phone is like, you're late to the party or something like that. Unless it was the agent calling her. I don't know if that's ever, if did you know who that was on the phone? I'm not sure.
No, I felt like, after we watched the movie, like looking back on it, I felt like it was supposed to be like the voice of the man downstairs kind of thing. And I don't even know, was it real or not,
True. Yeah.
It kind of makes you wonder, like maybe it wasn't even a real, actual call. But I feel like it was just like all this stuff just starts exploding, and not actually exploding, but like all this stuff just starts happening, and it's just kind of like a mad dash to the finish line. And then you're like, what? And it felt like the movie lost its identity when they had Longlegs kind of out of it, so to speak, like removed from it. That's what I was saying, is it went from kind of like a serial killer, like, manhunt vibe with some scary elements to it, to like all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, like The Conjuring.
Yeah, it went full supernatural in that last like 15 minutes or so. But I will say that I very much enjoyed Agent Carter's performance in this sequence, because I think that it was, I don't know if the phrase unintentionally funny is accurate, because I think actually some of the things he says is supposed to be funny. Yeah, like the audience was laughing a little bit at some of the line deliveries, like when he asked the wife, when he is trying to bring the wife into the kitchen to cut the cake, and then he's like, I'll come out of the kitchen, but you'll still be in the kitchen.
No. She's like, I'll be right back. And he goes, no, you won't. He's like, you're going to be staying in the kitchen.
I thought that was fucking hilarious in the moment. I was like, that is really dark but funny. I just thought like he played that role up, like he played that up very well. Like he was unhinged but like comedic. It was just entertaining in that moment. But then I feel like there's like, I don't know, this is when the movie gets a little messy for me. Like, like there's certain things that could have happened or that don't happen, and I'm just questioning like the character's decisions in the moment. Like, why didn't Lee, like, so to add context to the situation at hand here, Lee's mom has gone to Agent Carter's house to deliver a doll that resembles Agent Carter's daughter, because it's the daughter's birthday on the 14th of whatever month they're in. And the intention is obviously for Agent Carter to kill his family, and the mom is there to see it happen. But Lee Harker gets there before any killings happen. Like, she can stop it. She can shoot Agent Carter before he takes the wife into the kitchen to kill her, but she doesn't. She just basically watches him take her into the kitchen, and then you can hear the murder happening in the background while Lee's talking to her mom. So I don't know, that like some character decisions there. Like, I don't know if Lee was like still coming out of her days or what. Well,
then she tried to shoot the doll, right?
At the end, after the mom's been killed,
exactly, and suddenly had no bullets in her gun.
Yeah,
it was also an entirely different gun. It was a revolver, which she had not had. Like, that was a little bit weird to me. I felt like there were just a lot of loose ends,
definitely,
at the end, and like I don't know if that's intentional or if it was rushed. But here's an interesting thing too. Now that we were just talking about it, I'm thinking to myself, like, the whole theme of like all the daughters having a birthday on the same date, the same date for each month, the 14th. Yeah. Agent Carter would know that. about his daughter.
Yeah.
So like that is a big question mark to me. Like, was he sort of like, I don't want to say was he in on it, but was he like aware of this? You know what I mean?
I just think that's a convenient plot line. Like he just conveniently forgot about his own daughter's birthday
being on that date. Yeah.
Yeah, because that wouldn't fit with his character. That he would be like hyper aware of that. You know?
Yeah. It just seems like you said a little too convenient. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. But I in the movie, I guess it makes sense. They mentioned the birthday party earlier in the movie, and you just know that it's going to come back eventually, and it just so happens to come back at the end of the movie. But yeah, she can't shoot the doll. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch the scene because I'm not sure if she even shot. Like she should have more than however many bullets she had. Like she should have had some bullets left.
It clicked a few times, and I think she realized that like it wasn't able to shoot. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to give the ending not a great review. But at the same token, rarely do these kinds of movies end well or in a satisfying way. I mean, there's not, there's not a whole lot of, what was going to be a better ending? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's like an alternate ending or anything. But basically the bad guys win in the end. I mean, Lee has to kill her own mom, which is traumatizing, but the doll is still there, and the last shot of the movie is Nic Cage back as Longlegs, kind of looking into the camera, giving like a monologue, and then he says "Hail Satan" and then blows a kiss to the audience. Like that was I mean that actual ending was very, I don't know, was very good. I liked that part. But
that's my point, is I felt like they needed to lean more into him, and once he was like out of the story, it just lost, I think, its identity, and it started to get wacky.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep saying it felt like two different kind of films.
Yeah, but overall thoughts, I really enjoyed this movie. Definitely, I could see it being overhyped. It wasn't necessarily overhyped for me, but I still had a ton of fun with it. I would definitely see it again. I think it is a movie that you want to see again, and to catch all the fun little details throughout. And also, like this movie, like we said, it made you think. It kind of like It Follows. Like after I saw It Follows the first time, I wanted to read about it. I wanted to see what this discussion was around it. When I went into the bathroom after the movie was over, some stranger just came up to me and was like, "You just get out of Longlegs? What was your impression of the ending?" And I was just like so in shock of like, I was still like processing what I just watched. Like I didn't really know how to answer him. I was just like, I don't know. I got to think about it, man. But it was like, it was cool because that's never really happened to me, where like I get out of a movie and then like just a random stranger comes up to me and just is like, he wants to connect over this movie. Like that was cool. I loved that.
It definitely has you thinking, and it would be worth watching multiple times. It makes me wonder if there's is there a sequel? Or a spin-off of some type? I mean, because the ending was it left, like I said, a lot of things were left kind of unresolved.
Yeah,
because you look at like Silence of the Lambs, right? There's kind of like spin-offs there. Like there's multiple movies within that. Granted, their character doesn't die like Longlegs did, but I could see something being made out of it. But yeah, overall, I definitely enjoyed it. Worth seeing. I would agree that I think you could say overhyped, but in my opinion, it wasn't overhyped in general. I think it was hyped in the wrong genre, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and then this is just how I interpreted things, but I was led to believe like it was so scary, which again, there were some scary elements, but I think that's the wrong term.
Yeah, if they had marketed it as like the most unsettling movie of the decade, then I could believe you there.
Perfect. Yep. I would agree. So, all right. Well, we'll have to find another movie to go on a date and see. Side note, it's a little creepy that your background has a dollhouse. Just saying, after what we just talked about for the last hour.
Yeah, if I if there was a porcelain doll here, I could have sat it up like right at the top, just like staring at you the whole time.
There you go.
All right, so we'll cut there, and then we'll go to the outro. Do you want to do the outro?
You can do it.
All right, fine. All right, well, that was our discussion on the movie Longlegs. We both enjoyed it, and we were happy to talk about it. So thank you for watching. You can find us on YouTube at 5 o'clock sweats, X, or, well, Twitter, and Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you find your podcasts. Anything else, my friend?
No, we're going to do a whoosh here. Derek, we're going to give you another cut for the ending, for the outro. I'm going to take a stab at it.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Well, that's going to do it for us on this episode where we discussed our viewership of Longlegs, the mandate that Ryan and I went on. We'd love to hear what you guys think about the movie. Do you agree with some of our takes? What are your thoughts on some of the acting? Would you watch this film again? Definitely let us know in the comments. You can always find us on YouTube. We're on what? X?
Twitter.
Instagram, Twitter. We call it Twitter. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. All the good places really where you can get podcasts. At 5 o'clock sweats on all platforms. Be sure to keep checking us out, and we appreciate it. And we'll see you in the next one.
And as always, stay sweaty.
Stay sweaty.
God damn it. That was so bad. Oh, man.
You were
Do
like,
do we keep that? That recording does that stay?
it's still
sure.
going.
Is your recording time still? You're
ticking. Yeah,
still ticking. Okay, and mine's restarted. So I'm just gonna assume that we're good. So what were we talking about?